Okay, if you could just make your way into the room. So for the last session of the day, we're going to be talking about Cypress. I'd love to see a show of hands. Who's heard of Cypress? Okay, keep your hand up if you've used it. Keep your hand up if you use it every day. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Got a good crowd here. So Amir is a senior engineer with Cypress. He's got quite an interesting background as an electrical engineer working on mission-critical systems in the aerospace industry, but he gave all that up to do end-to-end testing. So that's how exciting this is going to be. I can't wait. Please join me in welcoming Amir to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, is my mic working? Great. So thanks for everyone for showing up for the last talk of the conference. And this is the last talk of the first ComponentsConf conference, and it's been fantastic. Let's all kind of give it a round of applause for all the volunteers and all the organizers. It's been a great conference. Awesome. So let's just get right into it. Today I'm going to talk to you about testing, but the point of testing is really to make sure you can ship your projects out, web apps, whatever they might be, whatever you're making for the web, to be able to ship it confidently on a consistent and reliable basis, and to also kind of keep your sanity while you're trying to do that. So, testing is one of those things that can be a pain, and historically it has been so. But what we're trying to do at Cypress is to completely change that, equation and make testing extremely enjoyable and, dare I say, fun to do. So, I've already been introduced. Amir, work at Cypress. I started out as just a normal engineer working on the product, but now my focus is purely on the developer experience part of things. And what that really means for you is that I care a lot about all you folks out here. I care about your workflows. I care about what tools you use. I care about what methodologies you use. I want to help you all ship your apps more confidently on a more consistent basis. So if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to me. I'll always be glad to help. So let's get right into it. Before we dive into the core tech and see what Cypress is and what it can do for you, let's kind of look at it from a higher level. I like to always understand the whys before I understand the whats. So let's go ahead and do that. So, with some somewhat recent statistics, this study that was done by Riley and another group, there has been, more people are adding automation processes to their pipeline, which is great, right? Automate all the things, fantastic. And at the same time, there's a lot of automation, but continuous delivery is growing, but it's not kind of matching up to that rate of growth in automation. And the other thing is that, more teams are adding regression tests. There's some growth, but it's not as much, right? So we got more automation happening, but at the same time, there is some growth in continuous delivery and testing and so on, but it's just like not as fast. So what is the problem there? Well, the thing is that this all is, heavily dependent on testing, and testing is hard, especially doing testing right, and also doing end-to-end testing, which are some of the most valuable tests we can spend our time writing. So, so part of this problem is that, part of a solution to this problem is removing friction in the development lifecycle when it comes to testing. And this involves providing faster and better tools that give us really nice feedback loops and overall give us a really awesome developer experience. That's what we need to kind of remove all this friction away. So keep that in mind. And again, let's step back even further at a higher level, and let's look at kind of the progression of web technologies in the past, decade-ish or so. In 2005, if you all remember, there was like frameworks like Django and Ruby on Rails, and if you ever use those or if you remember those days, these frameworks gave us nice constructs to reason about when creating applications, right? They made web application development much more approachable than it was ever possible before. And soon after, we got things like jQuery and all the other kind of libraries that were trying to do the same thing. And they normalized all the little pain points across multiple browsers, and we all started writing jQuery, right? And for a lot of folks, JavaScript was jQuery. And then, we started seeing more fancier frameworks pop up, and this was around the same time, 2006, was jQuery time, and in 2007 the iPhone came out, and we had more, mobile phones out. Internet speed started getting better, browsers started getting more advanced. Chrome came out. All this good stuff started happening around this time frame. But what this really meant is that for people, they had a much higher demand for software with great experiences. They expected these really awesome, rich experiences because they saw these like mobile apps coming out that were just really snappy, that worked really well, they were really easy to use, and people started using software more and more. Like my own mother, she didn't really use a laptop or anything like that, but when I gave her a phone, she was using it on a regular, consistent basis. So there was a higher demand for creating much more dynamic and rich applications on the web, and we got some, a bunch of awesome frameworks to help us with that, Angular, React, Vue, and so on. But the story here is that there was a transition from complexity moved from the back end to the front end. So in the past, we wrote like very dense back end code, all the logic was pretty much there, and we just shipped simple rendered templates down the wire. But now we ship full-blown applications down to the user, and a lot of complexity is on the client side. So what really happened was the web went from being stateless to stateful, right? Now we have really fancy applications like Google Docs and things like that. The web really moved away from just being this like static representation of things and just forms. And so what happened was the way we write our apps changed, but our testing tools did not adapt. Today we've heard a lot of great talks about all these awesome tools to build applications, but when it comes to testing, there has been great progression in technologies, but the same has not been equal when it comes to browser-based testing and end-to-end testing in relation to that. So that's kind of the background and the plot that gave rise to something like Cypress. So what is Cypress? Based off your hands, it looks like most of you know what it is, but for those that are not currently acquainted, let's just quickly cover that. Well, first and foremost, it's a tool for reliably testing anything that runs in a web browser. That's its mission. If you run in the browser, the mission of Cypress is to help you test that thing. And best of all, it's free, open source, MIT license, will always be so. So fork and play with it if you want. But the other thing, which I think is the premise of any great open source piece of technology, is that it has this really awesome mission, which is to champion this process that that makes testing enjoyable, gives you a great ecosystem to work with, and is heavily focused on maintaining developer happiness. That's really what we're trying to do. Because if we can make you all happy, make testing your apps just a friction-free experience, we know you'll be able to ship out higher quality products, higher quality experiences, and you'll just have a better time, and so will your users. And there has been traction with this mission. The project has been growing fairly fast. We get a lot of downloads from NPN, and the growth has been quite hockey stick-like since 2017, which and last year. So we came out of beta, and there's just been a lot of adoption there. And the other cool thing is that and it's been kind of, getting a lot of validation from folks that are in a position to kind of rate tools like Cypress. So one is like ThoughtWorks, right? They had this technology radar, and they recently rated Cypress as one of the #1 tools to adopt in general, not just in testing itself. So, and the other thing I should mention about the open source project is that it's a sustainable open source project. There's a lot of JavaScript tools that come and go, and they all do awesome things. But for a project to be sustainable, it needs to be backed by a group of people that are properly resourced to carry the project forward on a consistent and regular basis. So Cypress is backed by Cypress.io, the company, and we're just a group of people that come to work every day, and we're just focused on developing Cypress, and that's what we do, and that's what we care about. Cool. So with that said, let's dive into the actual thing. One of the awesome things about Cypress, and it's one of the things that differentiates it from other tools that do the same thing, is that the installation and setup is extremely simple. You can actually get started with almost no configuration whatsoever. You just npm install Cypress. That's it. There's no other dependencies or anything else to install. With that, you're going to get two things. You're going to get the Cypress desktop application. This is what you use in your day-to-day workflow, development workflow. And then you also get the Cypress CLI, which is what you'll use to spawn the desktop app or run Cypress headlessly in CI. So the way you get started in your local machine is to, after you've npm installed Cypress, you just open it up by using the Cypress open command. And once you do that in a fresh, brand new project, you're going to get something like this. And this just, when Cypress first opens up in a brand new project, it's going to scaffold the Cypress directory. And within that directory, it's going to have some folders in there. There's a fixtures folder, integration folder, a plugins folder, a support folder. Don't worry about all that means. It's just this is the construct Cypress creates for you to organize your whole testing realm within your project. And all your test files are going to go into this integration folder. And by the way, the name of this is configurable. Cool. So this is what the local desktop app of Cypress looks like. It's an Electron-based app, and it's essentially going to show you all the test files within your test directory, pretty much. And to run any of these test files, you just have to click on it. So if you go ahead and click on this actions spec.js, it's going to look like this. Cypress is going to bring up a real browser, Chrome in this case, and it's going to start running all the tests within that particular spec file. And we'll kind of dive in to see how this is all kind of organized and separated. But this is what the Cypress test runner experience looks like. And to deconstruct this view, on the left-hand side, this is what we call the command log. The command log shows you all the test suites and all the tests within your test file. And best of all, it shows you every single thing that took place within your test. Every single action you took, every click, every network request, all the things that go on, all the assertions you make, it's all there for you to visually see and inspect. On the right-hand side, that's going to be your app. We're going to pull your app in within an iframe, and this is how you'll see it. And so you get this side-by-side view, your app on one side, and all the things happening against your app on the other side. Cool. But one of my favorite features of this Cypress view here is that in this little video, the mouse cursor is hovering over all the various actions that Cypress took within this test. And as you can see, you're able to essentially time travel through your test by simply hovering over all the actions that took place or pinning an action that took place by just clicking on it. And the way that this is possible is that after every action Cypress takes, it takes a snapshot of the DOM. So in this way, you know exactly what happened at every point in time, and it makes debugging and understanding what really happened significantly easier. Cool. So let's look at the other cool part of Cypress, which is the Cypress API. This is one of the reasons I started kind of falling in love with Cypress before I even worked at Cypress. It was this really nice, rich API that had commands to do almost everything, and I could write my own commands, as we will see. But the API was very intuitive and almost English-like. And I could even kind of assume the commands because it was so well thought out. So how do you access the Cypress API? Well, in your test files, you can access all the commands Cypress provides via this CY global. So sci.something, right? Sci.click, sci.something, right? This is how you play with the Cypress API. So for example, sci.get a button. The button could be a selector of any element within the page, right? So this is just a quick little glimpse into that. And then once you, for example, do something or get something from the DOM, now you're in a position to take action against that element. So in this case, we're getting a button, then we're clicking that button, and then once that's done, we can assert something against the state of the world against that element. So right now, we click a button, and then we're checking to see if that button has a proper class or something like that. But that's just a simple example. You can even do more complex things, and this is still pretty fairly simple demonstration, but you can use like the Cypress request command to make a request to an API endpoint, grab the response body of that API request, and make some other assertion against it. But the important thing to point out here is that Cypress has this chaining API. So to kind of explain this, when you did side get button, you got that element, and that element now becomes the subject of the chain. And this subject is going to follow through down this chain, and you can take action and make assertions against that subject. So keep that in mind. Cool. So the other thing to point out about Cypress after this API is its architecture, which is another differentiation point for Cypress. So Cypress, unlike other browser-based tools, runs within the context of the browser. So what does that mean? That means Cypress runs right alongside your application. It is fully aware of everything that goes on in the browser, all the events, everything going on. It lives with your application. It is its neighbor. And it also has this other part, which is its node server component, and which you can communicate with, and you can handle pretty much the things you need to do on the system level, which it could be like seeding a database, essentially whatever you need to do to provision the world for your web application. So Cypress lives in your browser, and it can also do things outside of the browser. So keep that in mind. Cool. So this architecture, what it allows you to do, one of the benefits is faster test runs. Cypress runs right alongside your application. It can act fast as your application. So you're going to generally experience faster test runs. And also, because it is in the browser, you have direct native access to the DOM and your application's code, so you can do things programmatically. You can call code that's right within your application, and we'll get to see that. Cool. And because everything runs within the browser, so we just saw a little video, it's all there. You have access to dev tools, right? Because it's the browser. All browsers have this. You can pop up dev tools, and it can help you debug your application and also debug your tests at the same time. So it's a really nice debugging experience. You got access to dev tools. You can do whatever you're used to doing with dev tools. Cool. And the most important thing about this architecture, what it really allows is that we can, and then also the Cypress API itself, is that the tests, the commands within your tests run in a deterministic manner, and this helps mitigate flakiness. And so how does this work? I mean, so in this particular case, we have this example of filling out a contact form, right? There's about like 4 Cypress lines here, statements. And so when Cypress sees this, it's not going to imperatively execute your code. What it's going to do is essentially going to make a to-do list of everything you've asked of it. And it's going to execute those commands in the exact order you've asked of it. So things will happen in a deterministic manner, and it won't happen out of the order that you did not specify, right? So in this way, things will happen in the exact order you're expecting it to, so things are not going to happen in a way that's confusing or anything like that. So keep that in mind as well. It's a declarative way of saying what should happen in your application. Cool. So another benefit of this architecture is this ability to automatically wait for something within the DOM to come to life. So a lot of the times you probably have written like waits or timeouts or something for something to be visible or return or something like that within the browser. With Cypress, you're really not going to be doing that. So here, let's give an example. So we had that earlier example of clicking a button, and then we're making an assertion. Well, you're not like waiting for this assertion to come to life, right? Like you don't have to put like wait 2 seconds or something like that. Cypress will automatically wait, and since it knows everything going on in the browser, it can react immediately when that thing that you're trying to assert happens, comes to life. So Cypress will automatically wait, and this is going to get rid of a lot of guesswork when composing tests. You don't have to figure out, oh, should I wait 2 seconds? Should I wait 1 second? You don't have to do that. Cypress will automatically wait. By default, it will wait 4 seconds, and this is kind of like a pragmatic time frame that we found works for most use cases, but this is configurable. Cool. So we got a quick glimpse, but let's dive a little deeper with some examples. So I've written this very useless application called Birdboard, which is a very that's the Twitter client no one needs, no one asked for. And all it does is you input some hashtags within this input box, and it'll show you all the tweets related to that hashtag. And it's built with Vue.js. It has like a Express backend and talks to the Twitter API, and it has like a Mongo backend as well for doing authentication. So it's this app we're going to play around with. Just like many apps out there, it has a sign up, a way to sign up and a way to sign in. And these are some of the critical paths of an application because these things have to work for people to actually access your app, right? So let's go ahead and see how we can test the sign up and sign in process with Cypress. Well, we can use the Cypress visit command to visit the sign up page. In this case, I'm doing that on my local server right here. So localhost/signup. And then I can just fill out that sign up form. So use the get command to get all the various input boxes, email, password, and so on. Type in my username, password, all those fun things, right? And then I click that sign up button. Once I do that, I can use the Cypress location command to see if I progressed from the sign up page now to the sign in page to actually sign in after I made this new user. So I'm using the location command to get the path name of the current URL I'm in, and I'm making an assertion that I'm in the correct place. And then I'm going to just fill out the sign-in form, kind of similar to how I fill out the sign-up form. So, nothing crazy going on. And again, now I'm checking that I've been able to progress from the sign-in page to the board page, which is like the main page of the application itself. But notice that I'm just using all these out-of-the-box Cypress commands. There's no magic here. There's nothing going on, and it's very readable. You can kind of just look at it for the first time and understand what's going on. I'm getting things. I'm typing into things. And I'm moving along my application. So cool, we got this set up, and let's see how that looks like. So here it is, a little video of it. I'm able to sign up, and then I'm able to sign in. Cool. Let's see how we can optimize this further. Well, I run the test again, and I'm going to get a failure when I make a post request to the sign up page. And Cypress shows me that. It shows that my app tried to make a post request to the sign up page, and my user cannot move from the sign up view to the login view. And I know why this is happening. It's because I am not cleaning up after myself after my first test run. I've already made this user, and I'm trying to make that same user with the same credentials and everything. So I need to clean things up here. But the important thing here is that something went wrong. I didn't immediately know what went wrong, but because I have this great debuggability experience, it's all in the browser, I can just click on that network failure that Cypress showed me in the command log, and I get more information within my console regarding that request. So every time you click any action that Cypress shows in the command log, Cypress will show you important information regarding that command within your console. So over here, I can inspect the request, the response, the headers, and so on to help me figure out what is actually going wrong. So I need to figure out a way to clean up after myself. And so what I need to do is I need to clean up my database after every single test. I've already made this user, and then I'm not getting rid of this user on my next test run. Well, I have a MongoDB backend here that is storing all the registered users, and I need to clean it up. The way I can do this, I have to do it outside the browser on my system level, right? It's that MongoDB database running on my local machine. And I can use the Cypress task command to accomplish this. The Cypress task command allows you to run general purpose JavaScript on your system. That's all it does. And it works outside of the browser. So how can I go do this? Well, remember when I showed you that the directory that Cypress made when you first added it to your project? It has this plugins directory, and you can just define Cypress tasks here. So I have this general purpose clear database function I've written. What it does is it just cleans the database up. Doesn't matter what the implementation is, right? And this is how I can declare a task to clear my database with Cypress. I use this on hook, and I say, okay, on this task with the clear DB name, just run this general JavaScript function that just clears the database. So it's called clear:DB. That's the name of it I given. And then I go back to my test, and in my before each hook, I can refer to that function right here with the side task. So I just say, hey, run the clear DB task before each test. And if I do that, then my problem is solved, the database gets cleared, and I can progress with writing my test. So remember, you can use the task command to do anything you want on the system, whatever it may be. Cool. So let's see how we can optimize things further. So we have our the section that's currently highlighted. It's for logging in the user, and logging in is probably something I need to do over and over again across my test suite, right? My colleagues are probably working with me on this project, and they need to log in as well. So it doesn't make sense for all of us to keep writing these 3 lines over and over again. I can encapsulate this logic, these 3 lines, into a custom command. Something like this. Maybe I can have a Cy login command, and then I just pass in the credentials I want, and it will know how to log in that user. And the way you declare custom commands in Cypress is you use the Cypress global commands object, and you can add in commands to it. So I'm going to write this custom login command. The first argument is just whatever the name of the command is, in this case login. And then again, it's just general purpose JavaScript function. It can accept arguments, and it can do things with that. So in this case, I'm passing in my desired email and password, and I'm going to pass those along to all those commands that drive the sign-in UI. So still pretty simple. Nice. Cool. So I've optimized the sign-in part, and then there's the sign-up part. It's important for me to have this test run once to drive the UI to provision that user, and I can gain confidence that my UI is properly functioning and it's making the right calls to my backend. But I'm going to probably need users throughout my test suite to do various things, right? But it doesn't make sense for me to drive the UI and create the user every single time I want to do this. It's not efficient. Well, an easy fix for this is just to seed the database prior and have all that ready. Then again, I can use the Cypress task command. In this case, I have my seed database function that allows me to easily seed whatever data I want in my database. The implementation of it is not important. But then again, it's just another use case of the Cypress task command. Great. So I can clear my database before each test. Then I can seed my database. The world is great. And then see how short my test became right now. I just visit the page I want. The user's already there. I have this nice little command for logging in the user, and then I can check that I landed in the app page. So we started out with all those commands. Now we've condensed it down to those 3 lines, and this is how the final thing looks like. And it all runs very quickly. Great. Next thing. So let's optimize the login command now. So before, we were just driving the UI, typing in the input box for email, password, clicking the button. Great. I should run that once, gain some confidence that my UI works, but it's not as efficient, right? Logging in is probably something I need to do over and over again. So what can I do to optimize this? Well, realize that, again, Cypress runs within the browser. You have direct access to your application's code. So I can use the same action, the same function that my front end uses to log in the user, and I can use that same function to log in the user within my tests. So, for example, in this case, my app has a central state store system. In this case, it's Vuex. It's kind of like Redux, if you're familiar with that. And I'm going to dispatch the login action to programmatically log in my user using the code I've already written. So it's important to step back and realize that this is not a trivial thing that's going on here. Because you have direct access to your application's code, that means you can reuse the code you already have spent time writing to help you compose your tests. You don't have to create some other function to log in your user or any other action you need to take place. Just use the code you've already written and you already spent time writing in your test. And what this allows you to do is, it helps you keep your test code and your application code more in sync because you're using each other to help each other out in this case. Also, it's much faster to do it this way. And the way I'm doing this is I've attached the global instance of my application to just the window object, and this allows me to use the Cypress window command to tap into my application's instance and to do whatever I want in this case. Cool, so this is what the app looks like, just a little refresher. So yeah, so now we figure out how to log in and all that fun stuff. We can clear a database, see your database, log in, all that good stuff. Let's look at how we can handle with those requests being made to our backend, right? So my backend is using the Twitter API to get tweets. The Twitter API is a third-party API. I don't control it. I have this general contract with them that, hey, Twitter is going to work, and if it doesn't, well, I can't do anything about it. So this is a good case for stubbing this API endpoint that grabs these tweets, stubbing or mocking or whatever term you like to use. And the way I can set up a stubbing of network requests in Cypress, I can use the Cypress server command. This will allow me to spy and stub on requests via the server. So I use server, that's it. And then I can use the Cypress route command to tell Cypress which network requests I want to keep tabs on and I want to spy on or stub. So I say, hey, I want to stub all the get requests to the tweets endpoint using this fixture, this data fixture I have that is like an example set of tweets. And I can refer to the fixture I have via this syntax, fixture : tweets. What does that mean? Well, again, when Cypress was originally installed, it created that fixtures folder, and I can dump whatever data I want in that fixtures folder. So for example, I put this tweets.json file in there, which is just example tweet data, and I can refer to it using this syntax, fixture : the name of my file. So this is how I can stub this tweets endpoint, and then I can refer to this network request by giving it an alias, a label that I can refer to it over and over again throughout my test. So I'm going to just label this tweets. And what does that mean? The second part is just me grabbing that input box in the app and typing in some hashtags, but that's not the interesting part. Let's go back to the network request part. So I can now wait on that network request to grab the tweets by using the Cypress wait command. And I'm using the syntax @tweets. This is how I can refer to aliases or these labels that we create via that as command that we chained off. So I can say, hey, wait for this request to grab the tweets, and then once you get that, grab its body and make some assertions against it. It's very easy to do. So with a couple lines of code, I've been able to fully spy and stub and take action against a network request. Again, this is how that looks like. So when you do set up stubbing of a route, Cypress will actually visualize that for you in the command log. So if you see up top here, it's going to say, hey, you've set up this spying on this route, on this GET request. Yes, it is stubbed, and it tells you the alias, and even tells you how many times this network request was called. So it's very nice to just figure out what is going on networking-wise within your app. And I can follow this, this yellow tweets label throughout my application to kind of keep track of what is going on with it. So again, it's a really nice experience when you're just trying to understand what's going on within your app. It's especially helpful when you're in a new project and you just bust out the Cypress test for it, and you see it all run visually like this, and the command log assists in you understanding like all the little interplay that's going on. Cool. So Cypress commands, they have various usage signatures, so you can use them in very simple ways. But if you have more complex needs, they're built to kind of help you out with that too. So the Cypress route command can actually be used in a different way, where I can just pass in a bunch of options to create various scenarios. So for example, part of testing is creating problem scenarios. So what happens when a network request takes too long to respond? Or what happens when it's a 500 or a 404 or something else? I can use the route command to force those problem scenarios. So, how should my app react when it's taking 3 seconds to respond? In this case, there's a 3-second delay for this network request, and when I get a 404, right? You need to test these problem scenarios, and it's very easy to create them with this route command. Cool. And again, this is how the whole final test looks like. So I have an end-to-end test that logs in my user, signs them up, and can drive my main app view, and it can mock the backend as well. And I was able to construct this in a very quickly, and it was very easy to do. Cool. So we've kind of seen a quick glimpse of how you can use Cypress in your day-to-day workflow. You got your editor up, you got your Cypress view test runner up, and you can use them side by side. And actually, as you save your test files, Cypress will automatically detect that and rerun your tests. So if you're into test-driven development, this is a very good workflow. But obviously, tests are mostly run in CI, right? So how do you run your tests headlessly in the CI world? Well, the way you run Cypress headlessly is instead of using the open command, use the run command. And once you do that, Cypress will run headlessly. And we'll get to see a quick glimpse of that. But the cool thing you get with Cypress when you run it headlessly is that it will give you a full video recording of your entire test run, just out of the box. You can disable it if you want, but it's extremely helpful because when you run things in CI, it's a black box. You can't see anything, right? The browser is a very visual thing, and if you don't have this view, you're kind of lost. And this is how it looks like, running headlessly. So, it's that same action spec that we ran earlier, and it looks pretty similar to all the other tools that kind of run in this manner. Cool. So another component of Cypress is that it has this complementary dashboard you can use, and you can use it to report test results to it. And you just pass in this record flag, and then it will report those test results. And it looks kind of like your CI services out there, so it kind of shows you all the test runs that are running for your project, shows you the context of them, the browsers, the operating systems, how long it took, and so on. And it looks like this. It shows you like all the test files that ran in that particular test run. It'll give you the output, the terminal output, like your CI. But the other cool thing is that it will show you that full video recording right here as well, and you can speed it up or slow it down or download it and share it with a colleague if you like. But the important thing is, passing tests are not exciting. Failing tests are exciting, right? That's when you really care to look into things. And this dashboard also shows you kind of like error messages and stack traces, and it associates them with that video recording. And Cypress automatically takes screenshots when things go wrong. So when you have a failure, it will take a screenshot, and it will associate that screenshot to that particular failure. And so here's like an example of that. These are actual tests of the Cypress dashboard itself, on itself. We use Cypress to test Cypress stuff all the time. So yeah, it will show you screenshots when things go wrong, and again, helps you with debugging. But the other cool part about this is that this parallelization feature that it unlocks. And this is one of the first things I built when I arrived at Cypress. So let's kind of dive into this, because this is one of those features that is invisible, but it can have massive benefits for your pipeline, because it can save you a lot of time. And the way you use it is just to pass in the parallel flag. And this is how it works. So let's say you have some Cypress tests, and you provision 3 machines in your CI to run these tests. Well, this is how it works. The first machine comes online and contacts the Cypress dashboard on the cloud, and it says, hey, I'm ready for work, and I have all these test files to run. And Cypress says, cool, sounds good. And it will distribute the most optimal test file to run to that first machine. And the second machine comes online, and then the dashboard will also give it the next optimal test file to run, and so on and so forth. So it knows how to optimally load balance your test files across all your CI resources. And the way it's able to do this is because Cypress, as you're recording data to the dashboard, it starts to build this performance history about all your test files. It understands the performance characteristics of your test runs. And based off that data, it can forecast what the future performance of it will be, running some clever algorithms. And then with that, it'll know which test to run first, second, third, and so forth. And this allows us to orchestrate the optimal load balancing of tests on your CI machines. Now, what is the real impact of that? And by the way, this computation of forecasting the performance duration of your test files, we do this on the fly every single time you run a test run. So it's constantly being updated because you're changing your test files on a consistent basis. So what is the real world impact of that? So the Cypress dashboard itself, which is a big React application, at that point in time, it had 970 tests. Since then, we even have way more tests. And it was just being ran on one machine. So that's kind of shown right here up top. And during this time, it was taking about 23 minutes to run that whole suite of tests. And then once we enabled parallelization and we just added 6 machines, it went down from that 23 minutes to just under 4 minutes. So this is significant time savings, about 83% improvement. And ever since, we've added even more machines. So cool. So some things that are upcoming that are pretty nice, and it's going to save people a lot of time, is one feature is called test retries. So what happens is, we're trying to get rid of false negatives and to be able to identify truly flaky tests within your CI pipeline. So if you have 1,000 tests, 990 of them pass, right? And then one fails, well, your whole build still fails, right? It's kind of annoying, and you have to rerun the whole thing over again. Waste of time. So what Cypress can do here is that when we detect a failing test, it will in the spot try to rerun it about 3 times or so. And if it really fails like 3 times, then you truly know there's something wrong with this test. It wasn't some false negative. It wasn't some CI mishap. And you know that, hey, I have to look into this test because there's something wrong here. But in those scenarios where there's nothing wrong, it will just retry that test in that point in time, and everything passes, and you can move on forward with your build pipeline. And so we've got some other things in the pipeline, like full network stubbing. And what this means is that we're going to give you complete control over the network layer. This is going to help if you're using fetch instead of XHR, if you're dealing with GraphQL and things like that. But you're going to be the master of the domain when it comes to network. And we're going to improve how we report errors. We're very proud of the way we show errors in Cypress. A lot of them are human readable because they're handwritten error messages for various scenarios. And we have some good ideas on how to improve that. And then we're also working on cross-browser support, which is one of the #1 questions we get. There's Firefox and IE11 down the pipeline. The other thing that's pretty one of the cornerstones of the Cypress project is its documentation. It's really, really, really good. It's one of the reasons why I was even attracted to Cypress in the first place. I could just read the docs, and I immediately got what I needed to know, and I was very productive very quickly. It's got a really quick, awesome search feature, and I can, it's just like I just have it open up, and I'm always looking up Cypress commands. There's so many of them, I can't remember them all. But if you're trying to find a place to get started with Cypress, the docs is really a good starting place for it. We also have this example recipes repo, and I'm going to share all these slides later, so no worries on taking notes. Where we have all these various examples, for all the different scenarios you're thinking of. Oh, well, how do I write a Cypress test when I need to do this or that? How do I handle logging in this way or something like that? We have a bunch of these example recipes to help you out. We also have various plugins. One we recently wrote is this code coverage plugin. Figuring out code coverage when it comes to end-to-end testing has been kind of difficult historically, but we now have this plugin to kind of help you out with that. When you run end-to-end tests, you're going to quickly get a lot of your code covered within those tests, and it's really nice to see, the extent of the coverage of those end-to-end tests. So it's a plugin we wrote. It's open source, and my colleague and I, Gleb Bamatov, we recently did a full hour-long webcast on it, and feel free to check out that video. It's on YouTube, and we have a whole documentation section on it if you're interested in figuring out how to add code coverage to your end-to-end tests. But that's not the only plugin. We have way more plugins. We got plugins for doing component testing. So some of you are maybe used to using Enzyme to handle component testing, where you're rendering components with in JS DOM or some DOM emulation tool. Well, you can do component testing with Cypress as well. You can take a component in isolation and mount it to a real DOM, not an emulated DOM. Which means you can see all the events taking place, and you can figure you can test with a higher level of confidence. There are plugins for handling visual regression. There's plugins to add accessibility testing and a bunch more stuff out there. And you can write your own too. Cool. So with all that said, one of the other cornerstones of Cypress is its community. We wouldn't be where we are at today without the community. So our GitHub issue section is very lively. People ask questions. I wouldn't recommend asking questions in the GitHub issue section, but people still do. But if you find problems, please feel free to report them. We have a Gitter chat where people ask questions, so feel free to do that. And now you know me, so you can contact me as well. And with that said, thank you so much, and happy testing.
Thank you very much, Amir. Now, do we have any questions? Got lots of questions. I think we might just be able to do a couple of them.
I only take compliments, so.
Firstly, Cypress is awesome, so there's your compliment.
Thank you.
So in my journey of trying to use Cypress, I was migrating some protractor tests, and so I've got a particular panel that has repeated elements, and trying to fetch them, I rudely discovered that we're returning promises, so you can't just allocate a variable to a particular return. If it's repeated, you have to actually get the context, and then from within the context, query other elements inside it. Is there any idea, or do you have any plans to try and improve that developer experience rather than relying on promises and doing something within the promise of that repeated component?
Yes, definitely. So one thing to know about the Cypress API, and it works like that chaining API, it feels like promises, it looks like promises, but it's not promises. So we're not making a promise. It's its own thing. And the reason why it's built like that is to enable that deterministic execution. It has to kind of do things in a Cypress-y way, as we like to say. So it's not like one-to-one API with normal JavaScript promises. And the reason for that, again, is so we can run all these commands in a deterministic manner so we can mitigate flakiness. So be on the lookout for a better API, I guess, around when you're trying to treat Cypress command chains as promises. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we had another question around here.
Some say that it's better to write the text for implementation.
Sorry, it's hard to hear, so if you want to get the mic.
First of all, thanks for a great talk. I was about to drop a question about the cross-browser support, but I saw it's coming, which is cool. So I have another question. Say, I know there is a limitation if you want to jump to different URL. So say you're on a.com, and you have your authentication server on b.com.
Yeah.
So you cannot do that?
Yeah, so that's a cross-domain issue, right? So it's another common question we get. We currently don't have a good solution for it. So we'll see. I mean, we're kind of limited on what browsers, limit us on, because we're not using like traditional like APIs that drive the browser. It's all stuff going on, like algorithmic decisions we've made inside the browser itself. So be on the lookout for a good solution for that. But yeah, that's a common question we get is like, how do I go from one domain to another domain to another domain? We try to kind of solve problems for like the 90% of applications, and then there's also like that last remaining 10% of those use cases where we don't cover yet. Yeah.
Is it in your plans in the future, you think? Or?
There are plans, but nothing is being worked on currently on that regard. Yeah.
Always a backlog.
There's a big backlog, but we're hiring. So.
Yes, some say that it's better to write a test before implementations of code.
Test before documentation? Yes, because a lot of people use tests as documentation itself because it's explicitly telling you what is possible with your code in a very direct manner. So some people actually make that a requirement because it just helps keep the docs up to date. If you're updating a test and you haven't updated the docs for it, like there's a mismatch there, and you can catch that in like PR reviews or something like that. Thank you.
Okay, I know there's a few more questions, but we're running short on time. The venue turns into a pumpkin, and I just turn into Cinderella if we don't finish up soon. So please join me thanking Amir.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got a few things to finish off before we close.